We now come to our agenda item on local, regional and regional democracy in Serbia. Co-rapporteurs, Mrs. Lucia Kroon from Netherlands and Mr. Sören Schumacher from Germany, will make a presentation on the draft recommendation on behalf of the Monitoring Committee. You have the documents available. And Mrs. Kroon, you have 6 minutes. Oh, you start. Sören Schumacher starts. You have as well 6 minutes, and I give you the floor. It's only changing the name.
Thank you, Madam President. Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen.
Colleagues, I am very pleased, together with my co-rapporteur, Lucia Kroon, to be able to present a draft recommendation and a report on local and regional democracy in Serbia. Both were adopted by the Monitoring Committee when it met in June. Between the 28th of February and the 2nd of March, we were in Serbia. The focus of our visit was Belgrade, Novi Sad. That's the administrative capital of the autonomous province of Vojvodina, and Kovačica. And we had the support of Andras Lidström as an independent expert. So just a brief reminder, the last monitoring visit of the Congress to Serbia took place in June 2010. The recommendations made then were adopted in 2011. We met with representatives of local authorities, local authority representatives, the mayor of Novi Sad, Novi Pazar, Kovačica, the deputy mayor and member of the municipal council representing the provisional government, and the regional assembly of the autonomies and provinces in Vojvodina. As far as the Serbian Congress delegation is concerned, we were very warmly received, and also the representative of the Permanent Conference of Towns and Unions for Local Economic Development, the National Alliance for Local Economic Development. We had high-level meetings with the State Secretary of the Ministry of Public Administration and Local Self-Government and the State Secretary of the Ministry of Finance in charge of the European Union affairs. At the level of central authorities, our delegation also had meetings with the chair of the Committee on Finance, State Budget and Control of Public Spending of the National Assembly of Serbia, the Auditor General, the President of the Constitutional Court. We also met with the Deputy Ombudsman. I would like to thank on behalf of our delegation the permanent representation of Serbia to the Council of Europe, the Serbian National Delegation to the Congress, including its Secretary, Aleksandra Vukmirovic, and all our Serbian colleagues who contributed to the organization and the smooth running of the visit and provided us with very valuable information during and after it. Before I continue with our findings, I'd like to say a few words about the political context in the country at the time of our visit. Serbia is actively involved in the negotiations in respect of EU accession, and this process seems to have a significant impact on the functioning of local self-government in the country. The reform of the system of public administration is underway, and consultations with local self-government units have been enhanced in line with EU recommendations. Severely hit by the economic crisis in 2008, Serbia now seems to be on the road to recovery, though it is still running a high deficit and heavy debts, and is facing repayments in the future. The government has taken rationalization and austerity measures to stabilize the economy and is implementing structural reforms of the public sector, following the precautionary arrangements with the International Monetary Fund and with a view to meeting the criteria for EU membership. In 2014, the government adopted the public administration reform strategy to enhance decentralization and in order to clarify the division of responsibilities between different levels of government. We have to admit that the progress in the implementation of different parts of the strategy has not been uniform. But during the visit, it became evident to us that the government clearly identified the problems and is determined to solve them. We acknowledge the persisting general need to modernize and improve local self-government, the local self-government system in Serbia, and would like to encourage the Serbian authorities to further pursue the declared objectives of the reform by finalizing the legislative projects related to local and regional democracy and decentralization, and ensuring their effective implementation. We'll continue to closely follow the reform process in Serbia. And perhaps you'll allow me now to pass on the floor to my co-rapporteur, Ms. Kroon, who will give you a little bit more detail about our visit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schumacher. I give the floor to Mrs. Kroon. You have 6 minutes. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. Dear colleagues, indeed, despite of the economic challenges, Serbia responded positively to most of the previous recommendations made by the Congress in 2011, in particular through adopting legislative changes. It ratified the European Outline Convention on Transfrontier Cooperation between territorial communities or authorities and signed the additional protocol of the Charter on the right to participate in the affairs of a local authority as Congress recommended in 2011. In 2016, the law on the status of local government staff was adopted. We therefore trust that the national authorities will pursue the declared objective of the public administration reform strategy, finalise the legislative projects related to local and regional democracy and decentralisation, and ensure their effective implementation in line with the requirements of the Charter. We expect effective results to be delivered in practice. We also noted with satisfaction the existing good practices in terms of responding to the specific needs of a culturally diverse population and protecting minority languages, notably in the autonomous province of Vojvodina, that has more than 26 ethnic groups and 6 official languages. Now, I have to speak about the challenges that Serbia faces in respect of conformity with the provisions of the Charter. First of all, we have concerns about the lack of adequate resources available to local authorities for carrying out their functions due to a drastic reduction in financial resources in recent years. It may be understandable that local government should shoulder its share of responsibility in Serbia's attempt to achieve macroeconomic stability, but local authorities should not lack financial resources for carrying out their functions according to paragraph 2 of Article 9 of the Charter. We also observe the failure to implement the constitutional provision concerning the budget of the autonomous province of Vojvodina, stating that it should amount to at least 7% of Serbia's budget, and as a result, the lack of concomitant financial resources made available to the province to carry its functions. Therefore, we call on the national authorities to settle the dispute about this constitutional provision by enacting a law on financing the autonomous province of Vojvodina. We believe that the conditions are now favourable to tackle this pending issue without further delay, since the consultation between the 2 levels of government have been enhanced. Second, we observe the lack of clarity in applying in practice the temporary recruitment ban with local authorities. Even if the introduction of this measure might have been justified by economic reasons, the criteria for approving the recruitment of staff during the temporary ban should be clarified and its transparency improved so that local authorities could better understand the grounds for refusal. This would make the personnel policy more predictable and allow for a proper exercise by local authorities of their competences. Furthermore, we are concerned with the proposal to transfer responsibility for appointing healthcare and educational boards and directors from local to central government. In our opinion, the implementation of this initiative will undermine local self-government functions in violations of Article 4.4 of the Charter. Finally, in accordance with the Constitution of Serbia, under certain conditions, an elected local assembly may be dissolved by the government and replaced by a temporary executive body. We are much concerned about the absence of a legal clarification of the competences of such a temporary body, Article 8.1 of the Charter. In our opinion, it paves the way for an abuse of power, and it affects the very heart of local democratic self-government. That's why we suggest that the powers of any temporary body that is put in place by the government under certain circumstances should be legally clarified so as to prevent any risk of possible deficiencies. Moreover, we would like to reiterate the importance of solving this issue, since we have recently learned that on the 14th of September 2017, only a month ago, the government dissolved the Municipal Assembly of Presevo in an Albanian-speaking region of the country, replacing it by a temporary executive body. Last time when the government had recourse to such dissolution procedure was in 2014. In this respect, we would like to remind that the Congress in its previous report had already expressed its general concern about the Serbian government's power to dismiss local elected assemblies and asked to revise this legal possibility. To conclude, in my opinion, as well as in my co-rapporteur's opinion, all levels of government in Serbia should continue their joint efforts to encounter corruption, including at local level, through further strengthening anti-corruption policies. We will continue to closely follow the reform process in Serbia. In particular, we intend to pursue our very good cooperation with Serbian authorities and remain optimistic about the results of the reforms. I will hope that you will adopt these draft recommendations, and we are now ready to answer your questions, should you have some. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kroon. The debate is now open, and we decided to let the speaking time be 2 minutes because we have to finish at not later than 7 o'clock. The first, I call upon Mr. Harald Bergman from the Netherlands. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, dear rapporteurs. I would like to thank you for the very analytical and detailed report. And in the report, the issue of the lack of qualified personnel at local level of governance is mentioned by you. In fact, because of their limited resources, municipalities have difficulties in recruiting high qualified personnel. In my opinion, this situation risks undermining not only the local authorities' ability to properly manage their affairs, but also their capacity to implement large-scale reforms on the agenda, including the public administration reform. Indeed, for the reform to be effectively accomplished, local employees need to be able to implement new legislation and policies, apply new procedures and change their working methods to be more efficient, accountable and professional. Therefore, new knowledge should be gained and new skills need to be developed. And my question, do you think there is room to develop cooperation with the Congress as regards professional development of local staff, for instance, providing some kind of training? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ms. Breda Pekan from Slovenia, and after her, Mr. Piero Fassino from Italy will take the floor. So, Madam Pekan, the floor is yours.
Thank you for word. Dear rapporteur, thank you for the quality of the report. You mentioned the existing good practices, notably in the autonomous province of Vojvodina in terms of responding to specific needs of a culturally diverse population and of protecting minority languages. Those are very important matters on the agenda of the Congress. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the authorities of Vojvodina for a very informative exhibition organized today. In your opinion, dear rapporteurs, how could the Vojvodina example be made better known among the Council of Europe member states? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Mr. Piero Fassino from Italy, and the next speaker will be Mrs. Dusica Davidovic from Serbia. Please, Fassino.
Sì, ringrazio.
I'd like to thank our two rapporteurs, Schumacher and Kuhn, and of course I do share their proposals, but it seems to me that what emerges from the report is a situation in a country that is trying to sort of strike a balance and redefine the institutional architecture of the country when it comes to the role of local authorities, but with a temptation towards neo-centralism or centralization, reducing or curtailing the powers of local authorities. As I say, I support the recommendations, but I think the Serbian authorities should be called upon when it comes to institutional reform to move in the direction of acknowledgement, recognition of the role of local authorities and their self-governing possibilities. I think we should avoid the adoption of measures or standards that enable the centralized authorities to intervene unilaterally in terms of the relations with local authorities, curtailing their autonomy and their powers. And I think it's right, as one of the recommendations suggests, that local authorities should enjoy the final resources that are commensurate with their responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to Mrs. Dusica Davidovic from Serbia, and the next speaker will be Mr. Bert Bouwmeester from the Netherlands. Please, Davidovic.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Congress for sending monitoring mission to Serbia and for preparation of such a comprehensive report. Local democracy is a process not easy to sustain when it is achieved. There are many challenges for the society in this process, not just local, but global challenges reflecting on local level, economic crisis, migrant crisis, and many more. However, Serbia is trying to improve local and regional democracy, which can be seen from the conclusions of this report. We would also like to thank Congress for consulting all stakeholders and also national associations, standing conferences, towns and municipalities. We will work together in future in promoting reports' recommendations towards national level. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bert Bouwmeester from the Netherlands. I give the floor to you, and the next speaker will be Mr. Vincenzo Viniro from Italy. Please, Bouwmeester, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, rapporteurs, for this interesting report about local and regional democracy in Serbia. It really is impressive to see what developments towards a democratic and intercultural state with mature regulatory systems takes place in Serbia, and to see demonstrated how difficult it sometimes can be. And of course there are downturns, which the Serbian people with our support must solve. But there are things to learn from each other also. I'm glad to hear that Serbia has ratified the European Outline Convention on Transfrontier Cooperation between Territorial Communities or Authorities, since intermunicipal relations and cooperation transcends state boundaries. As a mayor of a border municipality, I know that people in these border municipalities have historical ties with people from municipalities across the border and still interact with them on a daily basis. Cross-border relations are also part of the daily work of municipalities. And this morning there was a presentation in the Governance Committee of the report that Karl-Heinz Lamberts is preparing on cross-border taxation. And this is only one of the issues concerning border regions that should be addressed. And it's not only about problems to solve, but also about opportunities to seize, for example, for economic development and employment. In the Netherlands, as in a number of other European countries, we have a network of border municipalities that share experiences about cross-border municipal cooperation. And I would like to ask Congress to extend this network and to have a broader discussion between the border municipalities of the 47 member states to the Council of Europe. Of course, there are already initiatives and programs from the EU. However, this obviously does not include all 47 member states. And this discussion should therefore also transcend the borders of the EU. And of course, we have the ABR, but that does not involve itself with questions of good governance. So this ratification of the Convention is a first step for Serbia. A broader discussion within the Council of Europe and between the 47 member states on this subject might be a second. I would hereby like to invite the Serbian delegation and other delegations to a further discussion on cross-border cooperation and the associated governance aspect that would be relevant to our Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. I call on Mr. Vincenzo Niro from Italy, and the next speaker is Mr. Alexei Ostrovsky from the Russian Federation. Please, Mr. Niro.
Bene, grazie, signor Presidente.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam. Special thanks go to the co-rapporteurs, Ms. Krohn, Mr. Schumacher, for this resolution, the recommendation that we are poised to adopt in a few moments' time, which show very clearly that in this particular instance there are, of course, economic and financial difficulties in the country, and it is important that the state get through this crisis. The resolution also talks about responsibilities, talks about transparency, and in paragraph 4 in particular, we express our satisfaction with some of the progress that has been made, such as, for example, the constitutional provision in respect of the budget. So the 7 points in the final part of the report need to be applied with the necessary efforts that you have highlighted in paragraph 4. It only remains for me to say that it may be that it would be better to make a constitutional provision for the dissolution of an assembly. Otherwise, there is no justification for merely dissolving an assembly that has been elected by the voters.
I call Mr. Alexei Ostrovsky from the Russian Federation, and the last speaker will be Mr. Goran Pauk from Croatia. Please, Mr. Ostrovsky, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. The microphone is on. Thank you very much, Madam President. I too would like to thank our rapporteurs, Mrs. Krohn and Mr. Schumacher, for this very balanced, sensible report with good recommendations. Thank you for your hard work. Unfortunately, however, some of the issues in the report and in the work of our Congress in general do engender some doubts. I've been working for 10 years now in this context, and I think there is much that is over-politicized. Now, working here, you'd think we would be a long way from politics, and this would be an unpoliticized body of the Council of Europe, in spite of all the efforts of our Ukrainian colleagues to make this into a forum for political discussion. Unfortunately, in the report, I haven't seen anything about Serbian citizens living in Kosovo, about the violations of their rights, about Pristina, and the dialogue with Belgrade that is supposed to happen but isn't happening. I haven't seen anything about how the Council of Europe or the European Union, with the UN mandate, are intending to defend the rights of Serbian citizens living in Kosovo. I would have liked to have asked the Secretary General this morning why in Ukraine we're not defending the rights of journalists, either Russian or Ukrainian ones. There are constant criminal cases, constant exilings, and we keep silent. What has our committee been up to for all these years? In all its reports, it should be at arm's length from all influences and to give an honest assessment of everything that happens. The people of Europe will only be grateful if we do that.
Mr. Goran Pauk from Croatia, you have the floor.
Thank you for the floor, Madam President, honourable members of the Congress, dear colleagues. In the report of the local and regional democracy in Serbia, in several paragraphs, the reporters used the term Balkan Wars, referring to the war on the territory of former Yugoslavia during the early 90s. Croatian delegation strongly object to the term Balkan Wars because it doesn't describe the reality of the conflict and confrontation which happened in my country and the region. It's proved fact today, also confirmed in a number of decisions of the Hague Tribunal, that Croatia was not participated in so-called Balkan Wars, but was defending itself after being brutally attacked. Therefore, we demand the term Balkan Wars to be corrected in the report. We do and demand this because of the responsibility towards historical truth, as well as the respect towards victims of the war. And of course, we strongly support every effort of the Republic of Serbia in building local and regional democracy mentioned in the report. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. That concludes the list of speakers. So, Mr. Schumacher, do you wish to reply to the speakers? You have 3 minutes.
Ja, zunächst einmal möchte ich mich bei den vielen Fragen
Yes, first of all, I should like to thank colleagues for all their questions and comments, which shows that you have paid attention to the Monitoring Committee's report. Now, I'd like to pick up on a few of the issues that have been raised here. First off, Ms. Paka from Slovenia on the subject of minority languages and how one can raise awareness of minority languages. You're quite right to say that Vojvodina is a very interesting region, and it deals very well indeed with its 6 languages, and it's a kind of a model in actual fact, and I can only commend the model of Vojvodina to other countries which have multilingual regions. So look at the situation there, contact the authorities there, and I think that one might usefully learn from their experiences. Now, moving on to the issue of cross-border cooperation, a question from Mr. Baumeister, I think he's quite right to say that transfrontier cooperation does exist in Serbia, as we have learned from our talks, and the European Outline Convention on Transfrontier Cooperation between territorial communities was adopted by Serbia in 2016, and that was in response to a recommendation from the previous Monitoring Committee report, so that in itself constitutes progress. Then we have the issue of the hiring freeze and the problem that if you don't take on new staff, then you don't have an inflow of new ideas, new thinking into the administration. I think that we need to embark on a dialogue, and I'm sure the Congress will be open to the idea of discussing possibilities for training. Thank you very much. My co-rapporteur perhaps wishes to respond.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Kroon, do you wish to reply?
Mrs. Kroon will follow.
To the speakers? You have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. There were a lot of questions. I will try to be brief about the answers. To Mr. Bergman from the Netherlands, indeed, as you rightfully mentioned, the success of any reforms depends on people who actually bring it to life. When we were in Serbia, the need to train local self-government employees was brought to our attention by more than one interlocutor. As far as I know, there is a project, Human Resource Management in Local Self-Government, implemented by the Council of Europe in Serbia and co-financed by the European Union, which soon comes to the end. Should the Serbian authorities express their interest in further cooperation in this area, I think the Congress could look into possible ways to contribute to it, for instance by our co-activities. Then I have Mr. Fassino from Italy and also Mrs. Davidovic from Serbia. Yes, indeed, instead of going back to centralization, we should stimulate efforts to go to decentralization, and they should be pursued. We called to continue reforms and decentralization upon in our recommendations. Mr. Nero from Italy, the dissolution of assemblies we already expressed our concerns in this report, and we advised to revise the legislation concerned to this particular body. Then I still have from Russia, Mr. Ostrovsky. Thank you for your comments, and you mentioned that it was a balanced report, but you think a lot of things are over-politicized. Well, I can assure you that our monitoring missions, we stick to the Charter, and we let us not be influenced by politics which concern our own. And then we have the last, which was from Croatia. I forgot his Mr. Pope. And we thank you for the comments of the delegations, but we will take them into account for our further work, including the work on Croatia. I think I had all questions now covered. Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Thank you so much. The debate is now closed, so we have come to the consideration of the draft recommendation, which is contained in document CG 33 2017-19. 2/3 of the votes cast are required to adopt the recommendation. No amendments have been tabled, so I will now put the draft recommendation to the vote using the electronic voting system. The vote is open. The vote is closed. Please show the result. 82 in favor, 2 against, and 2 abstentions. The draft recommendation contained in document CG 33 2017-19 is adopted. And then we finished with Serbia. So we have